That state of play. What else is new?
Observe and report. And it's official. I was right about the whole Seth Rogen, new laddism, Revenge of the Nerds being the great. Yeah, said it was rubbish. Always going to be rubbish. And now here is proof positive that I was right and everyone else was wrong. Observe and report is the end point of all this stuff. And if it isn't, then there is something seriously wrong with the world. Now, let me just read you a couple of quotes from the press
There
notes.
probably is something seriously wrong with the world, therefore it won't stop, clearly.
Okay, thanks for the optimism on that
Just
front.
thought I'd mention that.
In the press notes, this is directed by Jody Hill, who made The Foot Fist Way, which is kind of all right. The producer says, Jody wanted to defy genres. He really wanted to push the envelope with Observe and Report to do something that didn't fit into any one box. And Jody himself says, I want to make films that are dangerous and controversial, even if they offend some people. So presumably what they didn't want to do was to make Paul Blart Mall Cop for teenagers. So bear in mind, Observe and Report is not Paul Blart Mall Cop, okay? So Seth Rogen plays a character who's a mall cop, like Paul Blart. And he's useless and pudgy, like Paul Blart. He has a condition which requires medication, like Paul Blart. He's got a crush on the girl at the mall, like Paul Blart. He lives with his mother, like Paul Blart. He dreams of firing a gun, like Paul Blart. But like Paul Blart, he can't actually have a gun. There's a crime happening in the mall, like in Paul Blart Mall Cop. Solving it will be his redemption, like in Paul Blart Mall Cop. And though everyone will laugh at him on the way, like Paul Blart Mall Cop, he will end up triumphing, like Paul Blart Mall Cop. Now, the gag at the centre of this, the humorous thing that has happened, is that there's a flasher running around the mall. Now, I presumably missed a meeting because I thought that flashing ceased to be thought of as funny before the punk rock wars, and certainly in living memory has it been funny?
Benny Hill, Dick Emery did it.
70s. That's before the punk rock wars, and then after that you weren't allowed to do it anymore because it wasn't funny. Okay,
you weren't allowed to.
Well, because no one laughed. Everyone went, no, that's not funny. Do you want me to? Shall I prove a point?
No, don't.
Do you want to? No. Do you want to? hear?
I thought you were going to flash. If you're going to play a clip, that's fine.
Okay.
For one terrifying moment, bearing in mind we're live streamed, the nation held its breath.
I don't think it did. Here's a clip.
So, Ronnie, what is it you stopped by for?
Well, I'm sure you heard about this, but we had a pervert sexually assault several women in the mall parking lot.
Oh, really? The pervert?
Yeah. So, I just thought I'd tell you, just be careful watching your comings and your goings and whatnot.
Do you think we're going to be safe?
Yeah, Bruce, I think you'll be just fine. Bruce wants to know if he'll be safe. I should warn the pervert that Bruce is out there. Look at me, I'm Bruce. Look, is the pervert going to get me?
You're not laughing.
No. It was
okay.
got Seth Rogen in it.
No,
I tend not to laugh when Seth Rogen's involved.
So now this, remember, is the film by the guy who wanted to really push the envelope and be dangerous and controversial, even if he offends some people, and to do something that didn't fit into any one box, and therefore hasn't remade Paul Blart Mall Cop. The other jokes that then carry on from that is a hilarious sequence in which he takes out the girl at the makeup counter and manages to get her completely paralysed on his medication, after which follows a scene which, if it came up in a court of law, would be seen as a really unpleasantly grey area, but is played for laughs and has one line in it that kind of implies that it's not as sinister as actually it, and in fact is in the trailer, which kind of makes it even worse. And you're sitting there going, okay, so the guy says controversial, dark, don't even offending people. Is the problem with this that it's offending the fact that I'm I grew up in the 70s and 80s and went through it and therefore don't consider this stuff to be funny, or is it that it's just simply not funny? And I'm thinking, answer both of the above. He goes on to say, I think this may be the only comedy ever made that was inspired by Taxi Driver. No, that was King of Comedy, right? Martin Scorsese and Robert De Niro made a comedy that was inspired by Taxi Driver, and it was called King of Comedy, and it was dark and edgy, and everything that De Niro did in it. In fact, I think Pupkin is De Niro's finest performance. I think that's the best thing he ever did. And it's that idea of you take the real darkness of Taxi Driver, God's lonely man at the heart of that, and you just twist it very slightly. And everyone knows there's a very, very thin line between comedy and tragedy. So, you pea-brain, if you're listening, which I'm sure you're not, it's not the first comedy ever to be inspired by Taxi Driver. The guys who made Taxi Driver made a comedy inspired by Taxi Driver, and you know what? It would help if you went back and watched that before trying to remake Paul Blart Mall Cop. I mean, I mention it only in passing, but it's probably one of the finest movies of the decades, and not managing to see it is a crime of unforgivable proportions. Almost as unforgivable as making a film as uncomfortably unfunny as Observe and Report. Now, I did say that there were 2.5 laughs in it. One of the laughs, the half laugh, came...
There's no such thing as a half laugh.
There is, and here it is.
It's either a laugh or it's a giggle.
There's a half a laugh. No, it's a sort. We did this before, but there's a proper laugh, right? The half laugh came at this moment, when I suddenly realised that the song playing on the soundtrack was "It's Late" by Queen, which I think is from the News of the World album, which is one album after I stopped buying all Queen records on the basis that after Day at the Races I'm not going there anymore. I've suffered, I was there, sheer heart attack and Queen 2 and everything fun. Then after Day at the Races, no. But I suddenly thought, blimey, this is a really good song. I'm going to have to go out and get News of the World. News of the World with the one with the robot, with their hand falling out. Do you remember that? Right. And I did a half laugh at the point that I realised that 25 years later, 30 years down the line, having boycotted Queen from the point of Day at the Races, that I was going to have to go into a record shop and go, have you got a copy of News of the World? It's from my dad. He likes the French Connection. Is that okay? Thanks very much. So that was the half laugh. The other 2 laughs were, walking into walls, banging noses, that sort of stuff. Nothing of any consequence. But both of those laughs felt guilty and putrid because it's in the context of this, retrograde nonsense that isn't funny and does appear to have been made by somebody who says they want to be dark and controversial, even if it offends some people. But, just offending people on its own isn't good enough. There's lots of people who are offensive. That in itself is not good enough. If you want to make a movie that genuinely thinks outside the box, don't remake Paul Blart. If you want to make a movie that thinks outside the box, don't make a movie that has every gender stereotype imaginable and doesn't do anything interesting. Don't make a movie in which the schlubby guy meets an obviously glamorous girl who's dressing down for the purposes of revealing herself at the end of the movie to be the girl that he's obviously should end up with, the real sweetheart of the movie. Don't do that. Don't do that. If you want to make something, make him fall in love with somebody interesting. I'm actually ripping my headphones up.
Headphones moved, glasses moved to a Captain Mannering angle.
There's a scene in it in which, and Ray Liotta's in it. Ray Liotta's career, ever since he was in that Guy Ritchie movie, and you've hardly been able to hear him for the sound of him going around the U-bend. There's a moment when Paul Blart goes for not Paul Blart, whatever he's called, Seth Rogen, goes for a cop interview and he can't get the job, and some guys are listening next door because they think it's going to be funny, and then one of them opens the door and says, "No, I thought this was going to be funny, but actually it's just really sad." And there, my work is done.